have deep pockets who also have capacity to mobilize resources to invest in Nigeria, with a view to addressing the energy security problems in Nigeria. So I welcome all of you. And I recognize all of you, ladies and gentlemen, who are here to be part of this, session, which is tagged Invest in Nigeria. You agree with me that Nigeria has experienced, significant reforms under the President Bola Tinubu's administration. No doubt there are opportunities, and the future of Nigeria's oil and gas is the greatest, in Africa. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is actually a privilege to speak with you, today about why you should prefer to invest in Nigeria as opposed to any other destination. Nigeria is Africa's largest, oil producer. Nigeria is also, we have the ninth largest gas reserves in the world. And these figures are some 20 years ago. And it's always contended that, if we do some work now, we could be as endowed as much as, 600 trillion cubic feet. But we'll stick to the figures that have been there, before, which is 209 trillion, cubic, feet. Nigeria is also strategically positioned, on the Atlantic as a natural hub to service the West African sub-region when it comes to, supply, of energy, to satisfy the African needs, for the African market. Under President Bola Tinubu's, administration, certain executive orders, which are very bold, have reduced approval time, because part of the complaint we had when we came was that things that have to be done within a short time were taking as long as 2 years. And yesterday, all of you who attended the opening ceremony, we hear from one of the speakers there that, look, one of the secrets, this is hard evidence known to, to the world. And Nigeria is now a space where capital, could be easily attracted. More so at this particular time that even the IEA had changed its position, which was that, look, abandon fossil fuel, so that we can give you, in return, handouts. All of you were here when we were told that the International Energy Agency itself has said that there will be energy crisis in the world unless we invest $540 billion per annum on oil and gas. That is very good for us, because we have been contending that, look, the Paris Agreement had nothing to do with abandoning any sort of energy, but reducing emissions. But somehow, some people decided to distort the Paris Agreement. But I'm very happy that all of us are going back to the content of the Paris Agreement that says that, look, reduce CO2 emissions. And also to tell you, Nigeria, having adopted gas as a transition fuel, we also brought a policy to commercialize any flare gas. And so today, we are nearly, experiencing zero flares in Nigeria. Nigeria may be perhaps the first African country to experience zero flare. And we are supporting, those who want to invest in that space to do what they need to do. So in summary, let me say that Nigeria is full of opportunities. In the upstream, we have deep water, shallow water, and swamp acreages with vast reserves. In the downstream, we recently launched the West African reference market. Because we believe that Nigeria, because of our geographical location, and because whatever, you import into Nigeria, whatever you refine in Nigeria, essentially services the entire West African sub-region. So recently, NMDPRA, in collaboration, with S&P Global, launched the West African reference market. But we want to see how Nigeria will be, the anchor for refined products to satisfy, the African markets. You heard yesterday, and the data is there for all of you, to confirm, that in 2024 alone, Africa imported about $120 billion of hydrocarbon, refined products, and related services. $120 billion. And our target in Nigeria, at this particular defining moment, is to see how we can, capture part of that money. Even if we take 20% of that, it will be a good starting point. Bearing in mind that if you refine products in Nigeria, if you invest in the midstream, you certainly will have a market that will service not only Nigeria with a consumption of 50 million liters per day, not to talk of the diesel that is consumed, the naphtha, the byproducts that are needed, in Nigeria, but also the entire West African sub-region up to Central African Republic. And that was why I recall that when we remove subsidy from Nigeria to trigger private sector investment, Nigerians didn't protest as much as our neighbors who protested. How can we remove a subsidy that was bleeding Nigeria? And the protest was in neighboring countries, not in Nigeria. That is evidence of the fact that whatever we were doing was basically subsidizing the entire West African sub-region. The point is that Nigeria is the gateway to the West African market. And by extension, we want Nigeria to be the gateway to the entire, African, market. And I think that this will be the best time for anybody who is thinking about investing in hydrocarbon to invest in Nigeria, so you can take advantage of the opportunities that exist in Nigeria. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to bore you anymore, but the summary is that we have enormous opportunities in upstream, in midstream, and in downstream. And now that the world is changing, do not wait till tomorrow. Make your decision now, cut the deals